This day and time. What happened today, years ago?
Okay, so when you think superpower, forget the capes for a second, forget punching through walls or flying.
Right. Usually it's straight to the comics, the big blockbuster movies, that kind of thing.
But what if the real game-changing superpowers, the ones that have genuinely shaped our world, aren't about magic? What if they come from, well, us? From human imagination or fear or knowledge?
That's exactly what this source material we've got here explores. It sort of challenges that whole idea, looking at forces we've unleashed.
Yeah, these articles, these research pieces, they dig into it. And for this deep dive, we're pulling out 3 really different examples that they focus on.
Okay.
We've got the cultural icon, Superman, then something totally different, the terrifying power of the hydrogen bomb.
Huge shift there.
And finally, a power from knowledge, the discovery of blood types.
So aspiration, fear, and healing. 3 very distinct forces, according to these sources.
Exactly. And our goal here is to really get into this material, pull out the key stuff, and see what these, real-world superpowers tell us about what humans are capable of. Creating, destroying, saving.
It covers a lot of ground. So where do we start?
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with our first one. The power born from imagination, from belief. Superman.
Right. And the timing of his arrival, June 1938. You have to understand the context. The sources really paint a picture here.
It was heavy, wasn't it? The Great Depression still biting hard, fascism rising over in Europe, just this global sense of anxiety.
Yeah, uncertainty everywhere. People were searching for something, some kind of hope, maybe.
And then comes this character, not on some grand stage, but in Action Comics #1, a 10-cent comic book.
And the material makes it clear this wasn't just another hero. This was basically the starting pistol for the whole superhero genre as we know it.
And his role, right from the get-go, the sources stress this, he wasn't just fighting like space monsters.
No, not initially. He was framed as a champion for the little guy, a symbol of justice against very real, everyday problems.
Yeah, the sources list them. Corrupt landlords, shady politicians, greedy bosses, even domestic abusers. Problems people felt utterly powerless against back then. He was tackling that.
Which makes a lot of sense when you look at who created him. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, sons of Jewish immigrants.
Right. They had this deep-seated desire, according to the sources, to see justice done, to feel safe, to belong, especially with everything going on in the world.
It's this fascinating paradox, isn't it? He's literally an alien, Kal-El from Krypton.
Yeah.
But he becomes the ultimate symbol of the American way. How does that even happen?
Yeah.
How does this fictional outsider become such a powerful projection of human hope?
Well, the sources suggest he basically became a lightning rod for that collective desire. People wanted someone incorruptible, someone strong enough to step in when the system failed them.
That S-shield.
Yeah.
It started as just a logo on his chest, right? But it became so much more.
Instantly recognizable.
A global symbol, a shorthand for hope, for justice. It resonated because the problems he tackled felt real, immediate. He was, in a way, wish fulfillment on a massive scale.
Okay, so from that power, born of hope and imagination, let's make a hard turn. The sources point to a completely different kind of superpower, one based on absolute primal fear.
And that brings us squarely to the hydrogen bomb.
The material highlights a specific event, China testing its first H-bomb, June 1967.
And the thing that really shook everyone, as the sources point out, wasn't just that they did it. It was the speed.
How fast?
Only 32 months. Just 32 months after their first, more basic atomic bomb test. To go from fission to full thermonuclear fusion that quickly, that was alarming.
It signaled a massive leap in their capability.
And the scale.
Terrifying.
The sources mentioned a 3-megaton blast.
Which is
hundreds of times stronger than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Hundreds. That combination, the speed, the sheer destructive power, it sent genuine shockwaves around the world.
So, in the middle of the Cold War, the H-bomb becomes the ultimate symbol of power. But it's a weird kind of power, isn't it? The sources dig into this. Its main impact wasn't in its use, but its existence.
Exactly right. That's the whole concept of nuclear deterrence, the idea of mutually assured destruction, MAD.
Right.
Knowing that using these weapons would likely lead to global annihilation, well, it changed everything. The bomb, sitting in a silo or on a submarine, shaped global politics more than any single detonation could have.
The source material does mention that China declared a no first-use policy after that 67 test. Said they wouldn't be the first to launch.
They did.
Yeah.
But interestingly, the sources argue that even with that policy, their incredibly rapid jump to H-bomb status, that powerful test, it had a major direct effect.
Which what?
It basically forced the U.S. and the Soviet Union to speed things up, to get serious about signing the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT.
So this superpower, unlike Superman, who acts and inspires, this one works by not acting, by its sheer potential for devastation.
Which raises that big question, doesn't it? How does a power defined by the threat of its use, by not being used, fundamentally change how we think about survival, about conflict? Its power rooted in the promise of oblivion.
Okay. We've had imagination, we've had fear. Let's pivot again to the third superpower highlighted in our sources. This one's rooted in knowledge, in healing.
And this takes us back to 1900 Austria, Dr. Karl Landsteiner and his discovery of blood types.
It sounds almost simple now, but the sources really emphasize how dangerous things were before him, getting a blood transfusion. It was literally life or death roulette.
Utterly. You might get lucky, or your body could have a violent, fatal reaction because the blood just wasn't compatible. Nobody understood why.
Until Landsteiner. His work, the sources say, was just revolutionary. He found the key. Not all human blood is the same.
He identified those main groups, A, B, and O, and then AB came along a bit later.
And just knowing that, being able to classify blood, that changed everything.
It absolutely did. It ushered in the era of safe blood transfusions. Suddenly, you could test the patient, test the donor blood, and make sure they matched. The gamble was largely removed.
And the ripple effects in medicine were huge, weren't they?
Immense. The sources point out it wasn't just about making transfusions safe. It unlocked the possibility of doing really complex surgeries that just weren't feasible before because you couldn't reliably replace lost blood.
Led to blood banks.
Exactly. The whole infrastructure we rely on now.
And the number of lives saved. It's staggering when you look at the figures in the material.
Millions and millions globally.
Yeah.
People surviving horrific accidents, childbirth complications, cancer treatments like chemotherapy, things that would have been death sentences before, simply because we can now safely give them blood.
There's one stat here. In the U.S. alone, over 4.5 million lives saved every year through transfusions.
And they mention one donation, one single unit of blood can potentially help up to 3 people. It's incredible.
So this superpower, it's so different. No flying, no threats, just quiet knowledge, precision.
Yeah, it's built on scientific understanding, on using what's already inside us to heal and sustain life.
It doesn't have the flash of Superman or the terrifying shadow of the H-bomb.
But its impact, as the sources argue, is constant, it's fundamentally positive, and it's woven into the fabric of modern life. You could argue, connecting the dots here, that this power, born from pure scientific inquiry, has maybe the most direct, positive impact on human survival day to day.
So let's bring these 3 together. 3 very different superpowers pulled from the source material. Superman, the H-bomb, blood types, aspiration, fear, healing.
Yeah, the sources kind of summarize it neatly, don't they? Superman, representing our hopes and desires, you find him on a t-shirt.
Right.
The H-bomb, representing deterrence through fear, kept hidden away in bunkers, out of sight.
And blood types, representing rescue, salvation literally flowing inside us.
What's really striking, the material points this out, is that despite being wildly different,
Totally different fields.
they all stem from us, from human ingenuity, human capacity. Whether it's dreaming up a hero, building terrifying technology, or unlocking biological secrets.
They all reflect our ability to push boundaries, to create forces that fundamentally change our world.
For better, and sometimes for worse. They're products of the human mind, the human hand.
So what's the takeaway here? What does it all mean when you put them side by side?
Well, it circles back to that question the sources raise. What is power, really? And who has it?
Because you could argue each one wins in a different category, right? Superman wins on inspiration, the H-bomb maybe on preventing all-out global war through fear.
And blood types. They win on sheer number of lives saved day in, day out. It's quantifiable.
So maybe the point isn't choosing one kind of power.
That seems to be what the sources suggest, that the real challenge is finding a balance. We need those ideals, that hope that Superman represents. We, unfortunately, perhaps need to manage security and fear, the H-bomb's domain. And we absolutely need that knowledge, that healing power that understanding blood types gives us.
It's about balancing hope, security, and basic humanity.
Exactly. And the final thought the sources kind of leave you chewing on
Yeah.
is that the ultimate superpower isn't in the cape or the bomb or the lab discovery itself. It's in our ability to understand these powerful forces we create or discover, and then, crucially, to choose wisely how we use them, how we navigate the power, the fear, and the value of life itself.
That choice. Maybe that's the real superpower. Something for you to think about.
Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more history daily.